Thanks, Jeff. 你的中文真的非常好啊。You can come and give a speech. That was fantastic. 对吗？他的中文好不好？好，真的很好啊。我也可以讲中文一点点。Folks, thank you very much, Jeff, for that kind introduction. And first of all, can I compliment you and all your fellow students and I guess supporters of the Australia-China relationship all over the country for coming up with this initiative. It's fantastic. And I've got to say that I'm absolutely privileged to be part of this day today. What I'd like to do before I make some remarks is ask a couple of questions. I came across this very interesting piece in the Fin Review earlier this year, and it's called a China quiz. And I've got a handful here if someone wants to have a look at the other questions. But I want to ask these questions. Okay, about China. China recently moved past Japan to become the world's second largest economy after the US. Where was it ranked only a decade ago? Was it number 11, number 9, number 7, or number 5? Well, the answer is it was 7th. Only 10 years ago, it was the 7th largest economy in the world. Today, it's the 2nd. In 2003, when President Hu Jintao addressed the federal parliament, what spurious link between Australia and China did President Hu mention in his speech? Was it the Chinese invented meat pies? Was it that China actually sewed the Eureka flag? Or was it that China built the Snowy Mountain scheme? Or was it that China discovered Australia? Well, it was B, that China discovered Australia. President Hu referred in his speech to the voyages of the famous Ming Dynasty Admiral Zheng He and said that he had discovered Australia. Almost no scholar says that this is correct. When would Kevin Rudd most likely use pinyin? A, typing on a keyboard. 2, doing Tai Chi. 3, discussing programmatic specificity. Or eating Chinese food? Well, the answer is, of course, A. Pinyin is a way of writing Chinese words, so it would be when he was on a keyboard. And the final one I want to ask you, which Australian has the biggest single investment in China? Which billionaire? James Packer, Clive Palmer, Matthew Perrin, or a chap called Shi Zhengrong? Well, of course, it's Dr. Shi, because he is the owner of a company called Suntech Power, and a very good friend, as happens to be. So just if you're interested in that, please come and grab a copy afterwards. Now, Jeff, as I said, this is a fantastic initiative. I want to acknowledge everyone at UQ and at QUT for this, because I think it is absolutely important that a country like ours, at this point of history, is completely plugged in and connected to Asia, but also the subcontinent, and of course China being the country that it is. And I want to make some remarks that I think will stimulate some observations, some comments, some thinking, some reflection. I want to ask the question: what does China stand for? What does China represent? What is the meaning of China, or what does she symbolise? And I ask this question because I think it's fundamental, not only obviously to understand China and Chinese people, but also it's fundamental because it has relevance to how we interconnect, interrelate, and as a nation conduct our bilateral ties with China. And as young people in particular, who are the future leaders of our country, future leaders of our businesses, future leaders of our NGOs, future leaders of all kinds of key organisations and key stakeholders that will connect the dots between this country and that country, it's critical to know the answer to that. And I'll come back to what I think it is in a moment. The famous French general Napoleon Bonaparte is famously known to have said, "Let China sleep, because when she awakes, the whole world will know China." Well, today, the whole world does know China, the whole world knows about China. The re-emergence of China is having, and will continue to have, an enormous impact on nearly every country in the world. The consequences for Australia are even more significant. Take, for example, its domestic stimulus package of $1 trillion. Not only an internal impact, but an impact for countries like Australia with our huge dependency on commodity, and in particular coal. Now, Mao Zedong might be the founder of modern China, but do you know what? The man I give credit for China's place in today's world, and in my view is really the hero of China, is a gentleman called Deng Xiaoping. Once the Mao era moved on, China was always going to return to its place pre-19th century as the world's largest economy. And in my view, not only China, but all countries owe Deng a huge debt of gratitude for opening the Chinese door to international exposure and international investment, but especially for transforming the mindset of how a regular Chinese person thinks about their place in the world, both as an individual and as a country. The powerful words, "to get rich is glorious," are indeed powerful, because in 4 or 5 words, they transformed the way that China and Chinese people have thought in the last 30 years. To get rich is glorious was all the Chinese needed to show the world their sheer industry, their sheer ingenuity, and their sheer ambition. Not only did 400 million people move out of brutal poverty, but within a decade, China had redefined the meaning of Western systems of production. China had become the manufacturing capital of the world. Its exports to the US and Europe, especially, were the bedrock of its re-entry into the global economy. Now, if we fast forward to last year, 2009, 30 years on from Deng Xiaoping's famous Shenzhen speech, and China is putting a whole new economic architecture in place that will again, in my view, transform the global marketplace, and therefore will have an impact on each and every one of you, either directly or indirectly. Today, China's leaders are recalibrating their domestic economy that will drive prosperity and growth and productivity, but not just for this decade, or for the next 25 years, or the next 50 years, but for the next century. Just as the Industrial Revolution in 19th century Britain put the great into Great Britain for 150 years, until the rise of the 20th century America, I believe that you and I are living through another industrial revolution that will see China dominate global economics for hundreds of years to come. How are the Chinese leaders doing this? What is this new economic and industrial architecture? Well, this new architecture, in my view, is a focus on inventions. It is a focus on innovation. This new architecture is a focus on education, on science, and on technology. This new architecture is a focus on clean energy and clean energy technology and green jobs. This new architecture is a focus on biotechnology and nanotechnology. Yes, all countries are doing this. The difference with China is the pace and the scale and the width and the depth. The difference with China is the gravity with which their leadership and people are attaching to 21st century modernisation.